What's going on, people? Welcome back. So, after some much needed time away from the house, I am here today. So, this is going to be 5 chilling mysteries that were solved by kids. This is going to be my top 5 unknowns. There really isn't much for me to say in this opening part. I mean, the title is pretty self-explanatory in itself. So, I'm honestly interested to see how these kids solve these mysteries and what type of mysteries they were. So let's go ahead and hop into this shit.
From Scooby-Doo to Nancy Drew, fiction has countless tales of children and teenagers uncovering the truth behind a range of crimes. In reality, it's usually better to leave the detective work to adults and police officers. However, some children have been instrumental in solving crimes ranging from theft to kidnappings. Here are 5 children who helped to solve crimes. Number 5. John Dougherty and his accomplice Jennifer Morris had already committed dozens of burglaries across multiple states when they broke into the Tennessee home of 8-year-old Landon Crabtree in early 2012. The thieves stole video games and electronics, including Landon's iPad. Luckily for the Crabtree family, their insurance company was able to replace the stolen goods, but the thieves were still on the loose. Landon wasn't pleased. The thieves seemed to have gotten away with their crime, but there was little evidence for police to go on. When Landon received a new iPad from the insurance payout, he set about reinstalling apps which mostly consisted of games. It was then that he remembered his old iPad had the Find My iPhone app installed. The free app allows Apple users to trace their missing tech using any other iOS device. Landon used the free app to track down his iPad to a nearby motel. The 8-year-old told his father, who contacted police. Less than an hour later, police arrived at the Ambassador Motel, where they found Dougherty, Morris, and a room full of stolen electronics. Dougherty was arrested at the motel, but Morris managed to flee the scene, only to be caught and arrested in New Jersey later on. Police also found a receipt for a storage locker, where they found property linked to unsolved burglaries in Delaware, Georgia, Maryland, and Virginia. Among the treasure trove of stolen goods were firearms, video game consoles, and an electric guitar. Both Dougherty and Morris were handed prison sentences, while Landon received praise from police and his parents for his part in tracking down the culprits. Landon told journalists that he wants to work for the FBI when he grows up. Landon's parents were amazed at his work, as they didn't even know that the tracking app existed, which just goes to show how tech-savvy today's children can be.
I was just about to say, nothing against the kid. I mean, I'm glad that he was able to do that, but I mean, somebody that's around my age, like a teenager on up in this day and age, that would be the first thing that somebody would have tried to do if they would have gotten there. Like for example, like any type of Apple products, if they would have lost or got stolen, that would have been the first thing that they would have done. So I'm not saying like trying to take anything away from the kid, but anybody could have done that, and most people would, is all I'm trying to say here. Not trying to take anything away from the kid himself.
Number 4. Benjamin Beckman had stopped at the side of the road to try to fix his bike when he was attacked by 2 strangers, punched in the face, and bundled into the back of their pickup truck. Benjamin was just 12 years old in 1994 when he was kidnapped by Arturo Tapia and Eduardo Ruiz Rios. He didn't know either of the men, and the attack wasn't premeditated. Rios later recalled that it was a spur-of-the-moment attack. On one hand, this made it harder for police to figure out who was behind the crime, as there was no real motive for the attack. On the other hand, it meant Tapia and Ruiz were panicked and sloppy, allowing Benjamin to get vital clues when fearing for his life. The kidnappers initially considered letting Benjamin go straight away, but were spooked by a police car that drove past. So instead, they put Benjamin's bike into the back of their truck, blindfolded the young boy, and took him to a motel where they debated what they should do next. Benjamin told the kidnappers his family would pay a ransom for his safe return. Tapia and Ruiz Rios made a call home to demand $50,000 in balloons delivered to an undisclosed location in exchange for his safe return. $1,000 in balloons delivered to an undisclosed location in exchange for his safe return. Even though Benjamin was still blindfolded, he was able to look around the blindfold, and he made detailed notes about the layout of the room, from the location of the furniture to the fast food wrappers on the floor. Tapia and Rios kept Benjamin in the motel room overnight before deciding against the ransom plan for unknown reasons. They ordered Benjamin to lie in the back of the pickup truck and keep his head down while they drove him to a nearby neighborhood and let him go. With no idea what his captors had planned, Benjamin forced himself to stay calm as he lay in the back of the vehicle. He was able to read the details on the bottom of a baby's car seat and memorize the manufacturer's date before he was dropped off and allowed to return home. Police already had a handful of eyewitness reports with a description of the kidnapper's vehicle, but it wasn't enough to prove that they were behind the attack. Benjamin's recollection of the motel room and the car seat proved crucial to connecting Tapia and Ruiz Rios to the crime. Using the evidence Benjamin provided, police were able to arrest his kidnappers.
See, now that kid deserves all the fucking credit he gets, because not anybody would have done that shit in that situation. So, good on you.
Number 3. Joseph White probably didn't think that his 3-year-old son would become a key witness in the case against him when he murdered teenage runaway Doris McLeod. But young Joseph Jr. was crucial in getting justice for the girl that he called Dee. Doris's mutilated body was found beaten and partially decomposed in a field in March of 1991. The unidentified woman's hands were missing and she had multiple injuries across her chest, arms, and legs. 5 days later, her hands were found by hunters nearby, but her fingertips were strangely missing. The story received national coverage and posters were displayed showing the reconstruction of what this Jane Doe would have looked like in real life. It was only after the body was laid to rest by police that someone finally came forward to identify her. Ullman told police officers that she'd seen someone who matched Joe's description with a pimp known as Joseph White. Doris had endured a difficult childhood and had been in and out of foster homes. In 1990, she was living in a group home when she met White, a member of the gangster Disciple Nation. White eventually convinced her to run away and work as a prostitute for him. She was soon arrested for prostitution and sent back to the home, only for White to convince her to run away once again. When police were tipped off about White, they managed to trace her back to the group home, where the manager was able to identify her. She hadn't been seen since February. The next stop was White's home. They arrived at his Milwaukee home in June of 1991, entering through the front door. At the same time, White exited through the back door and he left behind his son. Police found items of clothing and jewelry belonging to Doris, but the evidence was only circumstantial and they feared that it wouldn't be enough to convince him. Luckily, Joseph Jr. was able to provide more evidence. Police showed the toddler a photo of Doris, to which he told them that's Dee. Joseph Jr. led officers down to their basement, where Doris had been held for 3 weeks. Doris and White had a falling out when Doris told him that she no longer wanted to prostitute herself. In White's gang, the punishment for any girl refusing to work as a prostitute was 50 blows to the chest. Joseph Jr. showed officers pipes in the basement ceiling, telling officers that he'd seen Dee hanging from them when the monster bit off her fingers. This was important, as police had not publicly revealed that Doris's body was missing any fingers. He told police that his father shouted at the girl before she disappeared. Joseph Jr.'s testimony was crucial for prosecutors to put White behind bars. The jury took only 4 hours to decide White was guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison with no opportunity for parole until 2074. And work as a prostitute for him. She was soon in 1990, she was living in a group home when she met White, a member of the gangster Disciple Nation. White eventually convinced her to run away and work as a prostitute for him. She was soon arrested for prostitution and sent back to the home. Police officers that she'd seen someone who matched Joe's description with a pimp known as Joseph White. Doris had endured a difficult childhood and had been in and out of foster. It was only after the body was laid to rest by police that someone finally came forward to identify her. Ullman told police officers that she'd seen someone who matched Joe's description with a pimp known as Joseph White. Doris had endured a difficult childhood and had been in and out of foster homes. The body was laid to rest by police that someone finally came forward to identify her. Ullman told police officers that she'd seen someone who matched Joe's description with a pimp known as Joseph White. Doris had endured a difficult childhood and had been in and out of injuries across her chest, arms, and legs. 5 days later, her justice for the girl that he called Dee, in the case against him when he murdered teenage Joseph White probably didn't think that his 3-year-old son would become a key witness in the case against him when he murdered teenage runaway Doris McLeod. But young Number 2. Cassidy Nurse was the second daughter of Morn and Celeste Nurse, but it wasn't until she was 13 years old that she got the chance to meet her older sister. Zephany Nurse was born at Groote Schuur Hospital in Cape Town, South Africa in 1997. Celeste was drowsy from pain medication when a woman came to visit her and the newborn baby. The woman, who was wearing maternity staff uniforms, picked up the baby and Celeste fell asleep. This was the last time for 17 years that Celeste would see her oldest daughter. Naturally, Zephany's parents were devastated, but they never gave up hope that one day they would be reunited with their daughter. After police investigations turned up nothing, the nurses kept campaigning for information about their missing child. In 2009, police received a phone call from someone who claimed they had information that they would sell for $500,000. It was a bluff and the woman had no information, but it did prompt the couple to renew their efforts. The couple had hoped the 3 other children would help recognize a teenage Zephany, who would now have been 13. Cassidy and her 2 young siblings all bore a strong family resemblance, and their father thought Zephany would look like them too. No leads emerged, not until Cassidy turned 13 and moved to a new school, where 17-year-old Michelle Solomon was studying. Michelle had grown up with her mother, LaVonna Solomon, just a few miles away from the Nurse home. For 17 years, everything had been normal, but when Cassidy started at the school, many pupils began to comment on their resemblance. The 2 girls became good friends and would spend time with one another outside of school. It was Cassidy who brought the new girl to her parents' attention. She and Michelle were enjoying a meal at McDonald's, of all places, when Morn Nurse noticed the resemblance and contacted authorities. What followed was a whirlwind of emotions and revelations for Michelle and people she'd thought of as family for her entire life. DNA testing proved Michelle was the missing Zephany, and LaVonna Solomon was charged with kidnapping, fraud, and contravening the Children's Act, which was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Michelle's identity was initially hidden from the public as she learned how to cope with the truth of her upbringing. The ban was lifted in 2019, and she released a book to tell her side of the story. While Cassidy may not have solved her sister's disappearance alone, her parents were right when they said that she should be instrumental in cracking the case.
Damn.
Number 1. This final story may seem to be too much to be believed, but this 3-year-old boy allegedly solved a murder, even if he wasn't related to the victim in the way that he claimed to be. The unnamed child from Golan Heights, a region in Syria, was part of a local ethnic group. These people have a strong belief in reincarnation and believe birthmarks are related to deaths in their past lives. This made a red birthmark on this boy's head of great significance. When the boy was old enough to talk, he told his parents that he'd been struck in the head with an axe in his past life. A group of elders took the boy to a number of villages to see if he could reconnect with his past life. They eventually found a village that the boy recognized. He was allegedly able to remember names of some of the former neighbors and recognize the house he once lived in. When he told villagers the name that he'd used in his past life, they confirmed a man with that name had gone missing 4 years ago. The boy even confronted his alleged murderer. According to witnesses, he called the man by his name and told him, "I used to be your neighbor. We had a fight and you killed me with an axe." The accused murderer initially denied the crime, but when the child led the group to the body of the former neighbor, he supposedly confessed. The skeletal remains of a man in farmer's clothing were found under a pile of stones in a nearby field. Its skull had a linear split consistent with an axe wound, which perfectly matched the 3-year-old's birthmark. With the lack of details, including any names, it's impossible to know for sure if this story is real. However, if it is, this 3-year-old boy could be the first person to solve their own murder.
Ooh, that shit's eerie, ain't it? But they did say that, for lack of details about the case or whatnot, but if that turns out to be an actual thing that fucking happened, because I heard about this shit before, then I mean, ain't really much to say about that shit, man. That's just eerie as fuck that a boy solved his own murder, you know? But yeah, this video was cool. It says 5 chilling mysteries. The mysteries itself was not chilling. I mean, this one was probably a little bit chilling, kind of made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up a little bit, because I mean, you have a guy that ended up dying, getting a fucking birthmark that looked like a split on his on the top of his head, and then finding the fucking the axe and finding the dead body of the guy who got killed, and it's the same like type of split on his fucking head. Dude, like, come on now, that's I'm not gonna say it's cool. I don't think it's a coincidence, bro. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe there is something to the like reincarnation shit. But as far as like all in all, like these mysteries wasn't really that chilling. This one, I'm glad that she was able to find her real family, but it was just such a coincidence that the two sisters just so happened to be like friends and shit with each other, and then I mean, I think that's what the fuck. Give me one sec. Okay, so I kind of had to go back through that shit again because I don't know if I just wasn't like paying attention that much, or if the person narrating just wasn't really like. Okay, so point is, I was right. The girl Cassidy, she met her sister who was named Lachey instead of Zephany, what like it was originally was, and they ended up becoming friends. So it's very, you know, coincidental that them two happen to be sisters, and you know, they were the ones who became friends with each other, and you know, that shit ended up happening. So it's a good thing that circumstances, you know, had happened, so that she was reunited with her family. Maybe I'll look up on that case just to see how everything is going now. But other than that, I mean, everything was pretty much, yeah, ain't really much for me to say. I mean, this kid obviously, like I said, did a good job, you know, just kind of like getting the layout of where he was, so that way he could be able to like pinpoint where, you know, the two guys had been to, you know, support, you know, the claims of them being the ones who did the crime and shit. And the first one here, like I said, not trying to take anything away from the kid himself, but you know, anybody could have turned on their Find My iPhone shit and, you know, locate where their shit is at. I mean, like I said, that's what normally what people would do once their iPhones or their MacBooks or anything go missing. That's what they do. First thing that they do is turn that shit on to see where the fuck it's at, and, you know, take it from there. So other than that, the mysteries itself wasn't really that chilling, but it was still, you know, a good turn of events in these scenarios that happen. And, you know, I'm kind of glad that I could leave off on this video on a good note. And then I also have to leave off on this video because my fucking camera is about to die, because I had to watch a couple of those videos over just to kind of get a clear and better understanding of what the fuck happened in those circumstances, in order for me to elaborate a little bit more on those cases. So thank you guys for watching this video with me. I'll put the link in the description box below so you guys can check out Top 5 Unknowns channel and original video and link. And I will see you guys in the next video. All right, peace.